We want to lift up BIPOC.
BIPOC. Two cocks.
You know, I do love my bisexual kings. But we will.
And I'm over here thinking, how many dicks? Buy 2 dicks. Welcome to Empaths Anonymous.
A space for dreamers, healers, and feelers, navigating the fine line between putting yourself first and holding space for others.
If you struggle with balancing your needs while still supporting your tribe, then you're in the right place.
Welcome to the support group.
Hi, hello, welcome to Empaths Anonymous. I'm Danny.
I'm Cristina. Exciting, before we get into what's in your cup, we have our first artist to feature and highlight, Fish Lee. You can find their art on fishlee.com. But they have sent us this, I was going to say painting, but I don't think it's a painting.
It is a colored pencil drawing with watercolors.
Oh,
We're going to take it off for you so you can see it.
Yeah, we want to show it a little bit closer.
She is called the guinea pig goldfish.
It's so cute, you guys. If you're watching on YouTube, we're showing an actual. It's so beautiful. They let us know that they have all of these characters that are like animal hybrids. So excited for that. We're going to put all of their information in our description. Please check it out. And if you are able to, support a local Southern California artist.
So, a little bit more about Fish Lee. They are an artist with a curiosity for animals and a vivid imagination. They use their creativity to bring new life to the animal kingdom. They are fascinated by both land and water creatures, and they enjoy exploring the connections and the differences between them. Hence, guinea pig goldfish. So that's just a little bit about Fish Lee. Again, like Cristina said, fishlee.com. She has lots of cute animal combinations. The story is that it is based off of a children's picture book currently in the works that is about a small fish in the ocean, obviously. And she is fascinated by land creatures and land animals and wants to visit the zoo on land. She's in a Little Mermaid situation.
I was going to say, it's giving Little Mermaid.
Yeah, she cannot physically leave the water. She is a fish and requires water to survive. And so for her birthday, all of her sea friends, ocean creatures, dress up as land animals to surprise her because she loves the zoo. And
That's
I
so
just
cute.
thought that was the most precious thing in the whole wide world. Thank you once again to Fish Lee for providing that. And we'll be
Yeah.
showcasing it for about a month or so.
Yeah. And as always, if you want to be featured, there is a link in our description and our YouTube description. We'll have it linked for you. If you would like your art featured, we would love to feature you. You don't have to be local to Southern California at all, but we do want to lift up I'm not an artist. We want to lift up BIPOC.
BIPOC. 2 cocks.
You know, I do love my bisexual kings, but we will.
And I'm over here thinking, how many dicks? Buy 2 dicks.
We want to support and amplify BIPOC artists. So if you are a BIPOC artist, please fill out our form and we will reach out to you.
Talk to us.
Talk to me.
Look at this beautiful spot.
Talk to me. Talk to me.
Come on.
Yes. Yeah, right between us, right between our heads. So what is in your cup?
Today I have water in my, what do I have? An Awala. And I desperately need it. Water in the Awala. I need it. I'm showing up a little bit sleepy deepy today, so I need to stay hydrated. I don't think I hydrated very well this weekend, so I think I'm paying for it now. So it's water today. It is a school night, so we like to keep it fun and fresh and flirty. I think showing up today, feeling good, like I said, sleepy, but I really want to dive into, which I guess is both of our cups.
Yeah.
In a way. So how about you tell me what you're drinking and then we'll get into what we did.
So today, these are one of my new favorite sodas at Sprouts. It's called Muse. They were on sale for 99 cents. This one, the lights, you can't see it.
Do you know? Sorry, I'm like intensely looking at the other side of the can. It's Dixie D'Amelio.
No way.
Yeah. No wonder.
Dixie.
$1 for a Dixie. $1 for a Dixie.
I had no idea. Wow, I did not even see that.
I just saw it right there. I was like,
and I was like, mushrooms? Yes, I'm in.
oh yeah. That's all she needs to see, and then it's going in the cart.
It has ashwagandha and maca root in it, and I was like, absolutely, I need those things. But yeah, they were on sale for 99 cents. I have the passion fruit Of course.
Of course.
Flavor. And they only have 5 grams of sugar and 25 calories in the whole can.
It's an inspired soda.
Yeah, and I love that you can't see it. Sorry, guys. The lights are making a lot of glare, but their marketing, they're like, what is that called? Packaging is really cute. I like their branding. That's the word, branding.
It is cute.
Muse-inspired soda.
Oh, it does also tell you the blend.
Electrolytes, magnesium, zinc, potassium, caffeine-free, no artificial flavors or sweeteners.
It tells you the blend. Ashwagandha, 25 milligrams. Maca root, 25 milligrams.
Okay.
Long Beach.
No way.
Yeah. Speaking of Long Beach.
It's made in Long Beach? Yeah, manufactured. Wow. So it says Dixie's drive for artistic authenticity was our inspiration for this collab. It's a collab. Together we crafted Passion, a soda uniquely formulated with your dreams in mind. Find your muse, find your passion. So this flavor is Dixie's flavor.
Got it.
Which, Dixie, apparently you're my bitch because...
Dixie, she's a passion fruit hoe.
Why do I keep saying that? I can't call people that I don't know my bitch. Because
I think it's very lovely.
People are going to take it in the wrong way.
No, if you're a girl's girl, you know what that means.
Yes.
Tell me in the comments if someone was like, that's my bitch. Or like, oh, that bitch. I love that bitch.
Yeah.
If I was like, she's a bitch, then
that's different.
That's different. I'm not saying that about Dollar Dixie D'Amelio. I'm saying that.
Yeah. Which I had a passion fruit donut yesterday, which we'll get into because we've been booked and busy. We've been booked and busy.
You guys, let's just start with the yesterdays. Okay.
Yes.
So speaking of Long Beach, we had the privilege and honor of attending the Self-Love Summer Jam, which if you follow us on socials, then, which you should, then you would know what we were talking about because we had been posting it for Southern California locals, LA locals, things like that, about this Self-Love Summer Jam, which was organized by Soko Ray Therapy. We had Cynthia from Rooted in Reflections.
Yes.
And then, of course, the OG, Brittany Williams, who was just on the podcast.
Yes.
So
from Healmatic Practice.
From Healmatic Practice. It was amazing. We did a little bit of crafting and did some affirmation frames. We, of course, got to see the amazing Brittany perform 3 of her tracks. Incredible. A lot of reflection after the performance, questions asked, things to think about. And then Soko had led a visualization earlier on in the event, but unfortunately we couldn't make it by that time. But overall, incredible event. It was at Plantitas in Long Beach, which
so cute.
I was so proud of myself. Did not spend $1.
Yeah. Well, I bought a candle from Soko Ray, but I didn't buy
not
any
at Plantitas.
plants.
No, I did buy a candle from Soko Ray because obviously. But when I walked into the plant shop, I was having a moment. Yeah. It was a good thing we just got directed to go sit right down.
Yeah.
Don't look at nothing. I can't with the plants. It was a very cute space though. I think so.
You guys, I'm a winner.
Oh, that's right.
I'm a winner, baby.
You are lucky.
Am I going to get copyrighted by RuPaul?
You did say that you're lucky.
Yes. And here's the thing, you guys, I'm not crazy. I was literally visualizing that I was going to win.
No way.
Yeah. So before she pulled the first name, I was just thinking they're going to pull my name out of the thing. And then Brittany pulled my name out and I was like, oh my God. So I want a t-shirt. I'll wear it in the next episode so you guys can see it.
Yeah. And we have some on the way.
And we do.
So now she's got 2 t-shirts from Healmatic. 2 t-shirts.
Yeah.
Other than that, previously on Thursday, we also attended Craft and Mingle, hosted by Hype Girl Healing. All these people that we're mentioning, of course, will be tagged.
Yeah.
Linked.
Yep.
And of course, the one and only. Don't want to say like starstruck, but it's like listening to someone's podcast for a long time and then seeing them in the flesh. It's kind of like, oh.
Yeah.
Coffee Con Pam. And it was their very first Craft and Mingle event. They talked a lot about decentering alcohol when you are planning events and mixers and mixers and mingles, because it can be triggering to some people, or some people are sober curious. Some people are on a sober journey. And they had really cool non-alcoholic beverages from the brand called Lyres. It's Lyres.
From Australia.
From Australia. And they were cool. Some flavors I liked more than others. Again, more coloring, which Pam is an artist. And so we had really cute coloring sheets that had, I guess, icebreakers or like more open-ended questions to ask the table in which you were sitting.
We did a lot of crafting.
We did. What was the name of the leather makers?
Rulas. Ruelas. Rulasco.
Yes. And that was their first event ever. And they made us the most beautiful
Oh my gosh.
keychains. They're not engraved. How do you say that? What tool do they use to like punch the leather?
A leather press.
A leather press?
Yeah.
Leather pressed keychains, and you got to use both sides of the keychain, and you could choose what you wanted to say on either side of the keychain. Pick your hardware.
It was
Incredible,
very cute.
so cute. Met a lot of people, and everyone was so sincere and so genuine. And we thank them for doing that because it's not very easy to put on events, especially if it's your first one.
Busy week. So I was reflecting yesterday, and I was gonna post it on my story, and then I was like, no. I felt kind of insecure about it. I didn't want it to come off as braggy. But I had a very busy week this last week. Mm-hmm. We're recording this on Monday, but I'm saying from the Sunday to Sunday.
Oh, yeah.
I was booked and busy. I went on a work trip to Nashville, worked with Julie Solomon. I went to Jessica Swag's book launch party, which was really cool. And then came back the next day. We had the Craft and Mingle with Cafe Compam and Hype Girl Healing. Mm-hmm. And then we had this event with Brittany. So it's like I had a very busy week, and normally that would exhaust me. Mm-hmm. Normally I'm like a one event a week kind of bitch. But I think that it's because it was all things that I thoroughly enjoyed and made me feel lit up. And it's like I'm feeling a little bit more, not necessarily in control. I just feel like I'm creating the life that I want. Mm-hmm. And it's like now those things are coming into existence, those communities that I want to be part of.
Yeah.
And so it's like I'm very grateful for that. And it's like the Cristina 3 years ago, 5 years ago, 10 years ago, 8 years old Cristina would literally be floored that I'm living this life. And so just having a gratitude moment of not everything, I think we talk about this a lot, not everything has to be perfect in life for you to create your dream life.
Mm-hmm. There can be parts of your life that feel like your dream. Not everything has to align all at once.
Yeah.
One of the tracks that Brittany performed yesterday was Gratitude. And it really did require some reflection because it's like she's not just writing those lyrics to make a hit song. You know, there are very, very intentional lyrics. So actually on the way back, we did end up listing a lot of the things that I was grateful for in this season because the version of me last year at this time did not think that any of this could have been happening for future Danny. So it's definitely something to always put into perspective, even though that's hard in the day-to-day. We talk about that with our guest.
We do. Yeah. All goes back into what we're going to talk about.
We talk about not
today.
Shaming ourselves for, you know, XYZ, you name it. Just stop doing it.
Literally everything. Just stop. I'm very grateful to be in the spaces that we have gotten to be in such a short time. Mm-hmm. That's what's blowing my mind.
Same.
Is that we are hitting the 3-month mark of our podcast being out into the world. Right. Yes, we worked on it for a long time before, but our podcast has been live for only 3 months, you guys, and we already are going to these really great events and getting these great opportunities. So
right, and being able to talk to people who are so available mentally and emotionally, and I really, really appreciate that and am grateful for those opportunities that aren't necessarily afforded to just everybody and anybody. So never taken with a grain of salt.
No.
Always considered to be super helpful and really beneficial to us, of course, but always our listeners. And we appreciate you guys showing up every single week.
Yes.
Watching, listening. Engaging otherwise.
Thank you. Yeah. We've grown our following. Thanks. We see you guys on YouTube. So we're so grateful. But we can stop the ramble and let's get into our episode with therapist and founder of Cultivate Calm, Cristina Castrillón.
Hi, everyone. Today we have a very lovely and special guest joining us, and that is Miss Cristina Castrillón, who came from Colombia at a very young age and was raised in Southern California. She has been seeing clients for over a decade and became a licensed marriage and family therapist in 2015 and has worked with individuals and group therapy in community settings as well as psychiatric outpatient hospitals. Welcome to the podcast, Cristina.
Thank you, ladies, for having me.
Thank you. We're so excited to speak with you today. Good. So what's in your cup today?
So what's in my cup is water with a little bit of lime. But what's in my cup in life is a lot of fullness, a lot of busyness with four step kiddos, three animals, home to take care of, a partnership, a fiance. Got engaged this year. Let's see.
Congratulations.
Thank you, thank you. And work-wise, just continuing to work with my private practice, Cultivate Calm, seeing folks in both California and Nevada, and really just, I think, going through the motions of life and the ebbs and flows extremely difficult with these kind of really hard collective times and everything that's going on, not only for clients, but for myself. And then kind of
Right.
navigating how does that work, being a human, right, during these times and also helping other humans during these really difficult times. And so a mixture of a lot of things, and so there's good and there's difficult. And it's been mostly really trying to be very mindful of keeping my balance and keeping my self-care up and dedicating time to myself so that I'm in a good place to filter all of these things that are coming through in life.
Yeah, that's totally, I mean, it's hard to just keep going sometimes, like business as usual, when you have all of these things happening around us and we're wanting to be empathetic and compassionate and respond, but our normal life also demands so much of us. So, yeah, I totally can see how, even from your point of view, like that can be taxing to balance and juggle.
Absolutely, because I think you have to really be mindful, especially as a therapist, kind of healer, of having a good space to land, to hold capacity basically for other people and really be a good space, a safe space for people. And so you have to be really mindful and check yourself quite often.
Yeah, not bringing in your biases and making sure that you aren't, projecting or your emotions aren't kind of taking over the situation. So, yeah, I
Sure,
totally
yeah,
feel you on that. So, getting
absolutely.
into it, we love talking about different types of therapy and different modalities within therapy. So, what really drew us to your work is how you combine the traditional therapy with spiritual well being. When and how did you decide that you wanted to incorporate these entities into your practice?
Yeah, it's kind of a long journey. I'll say it's a reflection, I think, in being in practice now for close to 15 years and really looking back on the way that we're taught, right? What we were
Right.
taught during grad school, our licensing, the powers that be that dictate all of this kind of therapy business. And though I appreciate the foundation of it, and there's a lot there that I'm so grateful for, I also really felt like oftentimes that Western perspective was a bit colder than I would like, maybe a little less informed or culturally sensitive than I would like. I started already thinking about this during my grad program, and I wrote my thesis on how to apply EMDR with folks who have really traumatic border crossings coming here to the US. And so, really targeting the immigrant community that we have, especially in Southern California. So, I was already kind of really looking at more of a cultural lens and why we maybe don't have as much literature and research on that when we have such a need and such a clientele, especially, in metropolitan areas in Southern California, like I said. And so that kind of started the gears. And, just being an immigrant myself, being from Colombia, my travels as well. I did a really important trip for myself when I turned 30 and I went to Peru and did some plant medicine with a shaman down there with my mom and just all of these different experiences, kind of spiritual experiences, ancestral work.
Yeah.
My mother is very spiritual and a Reiki practitioner and very much into holistic kind of healing, Eastern healing. So I think it was like at home, travels, thinking about my own education and my own place in this capitalistic society and really wanting to question what kind of practitioner do I want to be? How can I hold what I've been taught and the licensing that I have and also incorporate who I am and what I believe and what my spirit calls me to do. And so it's been such a long trajectory with that. And there's been so many pivotal moments, but I would say maybe those are maybe like the main ones for me.
Wow.
You mentioned that your mom is a Reiki practitioner, and so I'm guessing that you grew up really honoring these ancestral practices. What made you then want to go into the mental health arena and become a therapist?
Yeah, so I was raised pretty Catholic, right? I think a lot of us are. And I think within that Catholicism, both my mother and I had our own different journeys, and she had hers, and then I had mine. And it was just a lot of ancestral teachings and here's what we do for specific things. Here's, rituals that we do. My mom was constantly saging, burning palo santo, doing ofrendas, doing rituals. And so all of that was quite important, I think, for me, just leaning into healing as a practice, kind of really believing in that like natural instinct that we have, and particularly maybe women, and then those that we might carry within our lineage, which we have some really beautiful ones in my lineage, and honoring that, I think, honoring that in a way where I could connect to it more as I got older. Maybe I was a little more distanced when I was a little more assimilated and Western when I was younger, which changed as I got older. So I would say that piece. And then really growing up with a lot of adversity. We went through a lot growing up here, being immigrants, being low income, English as a second language, basically raised by a single mom, issues in our household with alcoholism and other things. And so all these moments of adversity, I think, really geared me towards wanting to be in the helping profession. So I didn't know what exactly I wanted to do in the helping profession, but I know I wanted to be in it. So what I started to do in college was just take those types of courses and join those organizations and start to just kind of do some work to see where I landed. And I landed in the therapy world. I did social work and advocacy for many years in Orange County, but I really loved the therapeutic approach in the sense of just that one-on-one communion with someone and really getting that like privilege and honor to walk with someone in their journey. And so I think I was really moved by that. And that's when I decided, okay, therapy is my way to go. I really think we are pretty fascinating. This is a really interesting human experience we're all having here. And I think collectively, between just kind of my household, how I was raised, who I am, it all just came together to land me in this space.
I think it's so important, and it's such a great time that we're living in, that we have so much access. I think it's so important to be able to have a therapist who understands your culture and is part of your culture. I'm half Black, and so my first therapist was also Black, and it was one of those experiences that was just deeply healing for me. And from there, I really dug into my personal ancestry, and I looked into what rituals did my ancestors do, and where did I come from, and what are the things that they value, and really returning back to the earth and having this kind of like you exploring your practice, this consciousness of there are so many others that came before me, especially women, and what can I do to honor my ancestors that came before me that didn't have access to the things that I have now, so that I can really be my highest self and the best self I can possibly be.
Yeah, you're so right. And I'm happy that you were able to go through that journey in a positive way, because a lot of people struggle and unfortunately sometimes don't find good fits, that where people are culturally informed, or you get someone on the other end that is like you, right? And I think therapy is about really being seen. It's important to be seen. It's important to be validated, because we're often so invalidated and so not seen in day-to-day life. And so to be able to have a practitioner that can really see you on a lot of levels, and it's not just this, I'm breaking you down on this psychological level, right? It's like a spirit, it's a connection. And so it's quite important. And I think a lot of us, and maybe you ladies, and I think so listening a little bit to your podcasts, are like, really, how are we reckoning with this social awareness and consciousness that we're all going through, where we are really peeling things back and looking at the foundation of what was taken from us. And for a lot of us, we were told, you have to be, right, very Eurocentric. You have to be this way because of colonialism. And so I think when we're looking at what colonialism has done to us, what it's currently doing to folks, and we're reflecting on what it's done to us and our ancestors, we're really realizing that the gifts and the healing and the beauty has been there all along. And all we really needed was that communion and community. And so I think it's really important now more than ever that we have BIPOC folks out there as clinicians and people who can really validate experiences and everything that's been going on collectively. So yeah, I'm happy that you've been able to find that. And I think that that's really important. And when I meet with people who are looking for therapy for the first time, I'm like, go with what feels right. And even, if that's not me, that's great, but figure out what feels good. And if someone like touches your soul and you feel comfortable and safe and you feel seen, pick that clinician, for whatever reason that may be for whomever is looking. But it's vital. It's a relationship, outside of just modalities.
Yeah, and it's good to hear from your perspective that you don't get offended, because I have had not great fits in the past. And I was like, oh, is this going to hurt their feelings or hurt their practice? Or I'm like, is it just me? Am I just not, kind of opening up in the way that I should? But it is really important to note that not everyone is for everyone. And it's totally okay to keep searching until you find somebody, like you said, who makes you feel safe.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. It's
Definitely.
such a deep delve into such a really vulnerable space. You're giving a lot of yourself to a total stranger. That's a huge ask for people who have pretty much worked, with a lot of protection mechanisms, a lot of things that have kept them safe. And so we're saying, hey, like, open that door for this total stranger. It has to be a good fit. And so I really like any service, right? Someone wouldn't want to settle with a financial advisor or a doctor or someone that doesn't feel like a good fit for them. It's the same thing, we're clinicians just the same. And so, yeah, I really advocate for people to find that.
Find your missing puzzle piece.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've not intentionally, but have already had two different therapists. And, when I moved on from my first one, I expressed how I was sad because I still wanted to keep seeing her and that I wish it just wasn't so abrupt and all the reasons, right? And she was like, you know what? We are kind of like a box of donuts and you get to try different donuts and they might, all taste different to you. Some might taste really good and the other one might not be your donut. So
Yeah.
it was nice for her to explain it to me that way because, again, dealing with always being hyper aware and hyper vigilant of everyone and everyone's feelings, I was afraid that I was going to hurt her feelings by saying I couldn't see her anymore. And she kind of just laid it out. It's okay.
Yeah, because I think we have to learn to not involve ego in this, right? And to really know that it's about the person on the other end. And yeah, we're all different. And I think that's really neat. That's actually vital because everyone is so different and different energy, different relationships fit. And even seasons, I've had clients that have had therapists in the past, and it's like they had a beautiful season. They got what they could and would out of that situation. Then they're now wanting to work with someone else in a different energy or on other topics. And so, yeah, you can have your seasons. I've done grief work with people who are like, I really, connected and loved my therapist. We did deep work. And, even though I'm here and ready to do new work with a new person, that's still hard, right? There's attachments, there's all these things. So, yeah, that's an interesting one that I don't think gets talked about enough.
On that note, we did discuss a little bit earlier about EMDR, and I know that it's, as far as mainstream is concerned, a little bit more of a newer topic that people are discussing as far as different modalities aside from talk therapy. So how does anyone know if they're an appropriate candidate for EMDR?
Yeah, that's a good question, actually, because I think we're starting to hear about it more and it's getting really spoken about by like celebrities and the Prince and all these people who are bringing it up and making it known, which is beautiful because it is a wonderful modality. But yes, maybe someone might not be a good fit or it might not be a good time. So the thing with EMDR is I think people sometimes want to jump right into it. And if they haven't done any legwork before to have a foundation of they've never done therapy before or even been able to talk and cognitively speak about the information and narratives behind what's gone on, they need to know that they just might need a little more time. So sometimes I just have to slow down and be like, let's go over it and process it and get you ready so that it's not like we're just whipping it out and really kind of exposing someone's inner world to a lot of trauma that they might have blocked out or they just might not have been ready for. And so you've got to do a lot of prep work. So I want people to know that it's not something that you always want to just go right into. And then we have to consider certain things like folks who really struggle with issues like dissociation. That could be difficult to navigate, and we have to make sure that someone's in a good place to be able to do that and have the resources to handle what might come up. Because it's not only what comes up, but then, yeah, then that's open now. What happens after that? There's, a process here. And so issues with dissociation, and then issues sometimes with really severe diagnoses, maybe like schizophrenia and someone who might be having difficulty with reality, paranoia. Sometimes bipolar disorder, it can depend on psychoses, so things of that nature. I think when we're looking at deeper neurological issues, we have to be really mindful, and someone hopefully can be really trained and prepared to know if they're a good candidate or not. But I would say those are the main things that I kind of look for.
Yeah. That makes sense that it requires a little bit of work beforehand. I don't think that a lot of us are able to just step right into something that can be so intense, because I've considered it as well. And also my current therapist is, well, you are, so knowledgeable in so many different things, and you are very self-aware and things like that. Are you ready to graduate? And I'm like, no. Yeah. So it's like, honestly, really having that moment with yourself and making sure that you're making the right choice. Because I could have said yes, gotten my hour back every 2 weeks, but I know that I'm not ready to move past a certain stage, or that even when I am in a session with her, maybe there are things that I'm holding back on that I've not yet really unpacked with her yet. And if I were to graduate, I don't know how I would move on or what I would move on to, because if the next step is for me to do a little bit more intense work like EMDR, I don't think that I would be a good candidate as of right now, because I don't think that I've done enough of that legwork. There hasn't been enough preparation for me. So it's really good to know that it's certainly not for everyone, and it sounds like it's really not for beginners.
Not going too deeply, like there could be things like what we do resourcing, where we start to build you up of what are the positives, what are the resources, what are the things we can pull from that we can do. But going into the deeper work and kind of the trauma stuff, or maybe the really deep-seated blocking beliefs that have been there for so long, that takes a little bit more unpacking. And so, yeah, I'm proud of you. That's pretty self-aware to be like, not yet. I like what you said, because maybe haven't thought about that as a therapist as often. As like sometimes maybe there is a little withholding, things that we might not know about. So we could be basing your progress on what we know, but what if there is more that we don't know, right? You guys hold the key to that. And so I appreciate that honesty, because I think it's important. And also, to me, I know the Western framework is do short-term therapy, right? Especially insurance companies, especially Kaiser, are like, let's just do a few short sessions and then you're good and you graduate and you're done. And I'm such a believer. I've had clients for years because I'm a believer of it's a long game. I think we're always hopefully learning and growing. I get more concerned when someone is like, nope, I'm like all self-actualized and I'm all good. I think it's great to be like, I'm a learner and I want to keep growing and I want to keep evolving, because also it's things from our past, but then also things that just come up day to day, moment to moment, on a macro scale, on a collective scale, and a micro scale. So life's hard, man.
Yeah.
I think we all need a little therapy.
Oh,
Right.
yes. Yeah.
Yeah.
If
And
I
there's
could.
been times too where I went to therapy for a year, then I took a 6 month break, then I went to therapy for 2 years. And I was like, you know what? I think that we really dug deep on some things that I really just need some time, because it's like sometimes I feel like I'm on the self development hamster wheel. And it's like I'm never giving myself a breather to like, I've gotten to this level. Let that sink in a little bit. And let me just really sit with these feelings and with these things that I've overcome, instead of constantly jumping into another thing and another thing and another thing. So I think that that's valid to bring up too sometimes, is like I could have a therapist that I could have, like you're saying, for years and years, but sometimes I might need to take a break for a month or two or 3, 4, so I can really just let these concepts sink in and integrate them into my life instead of just talking about them.
Yeah, you're so right. And that's a really important topic. I think with therapy and also with plant medicine, people aren't understanding that integration is really important. How do we sit with and slow down and actually implement and use and process everything that we've been working towards? That goes back into that capitalistic mentality of we're always working towards something, right? We're always doing, we've got to be doing, we've got to be doing. And what about the being part, right? What about when you're just being a human and you're really integrating everything that you're learning and what you want to work on and test out? You need time. You need time. And so, yeah, that's great that you've been aware of that, because it's easy to forget and just get stuck in the I always have to be working on something new, doing something new. And that's beautiful, but we also really, yeah, when do we stop and slow down and integrate that? And so, yeah, thank you for bringing that up.
You said you've reached a certain level. So to me, it's like you get to a certain level of a video game and you kind of just live there for a minute and you like see what the level is about. What can I do here? And what can I do there? So it's, I think the presence at the level that you reach is just as important as reaching the level.
Yeah.
So it's just like, oh, I'm so happy to be here. So now let me be here. We have to allow ourselves to get to that point, because I'm the same way. It's like, how many different things can I get 100% on? How many things can I achieve in this year? What can I do next? Where can I go? And it would be nice for me to be okay with the answer of just, I am just
Yeah.
here.
Yeah.
I'm
Yeah.
slowing down. I'm learning rest, is what I tell people nowadays. Now that I'm a little older and I'm not in that grind, what's next? I'm like, okay, I'm just being. I'm just being here in my home, being with my animals, being with my loved ones, learning how to rest and learning how to not feel guilty about that and being okay slowing down. And so, yeah, there's so many things to implement and we need time for that. We don't have to sell ourselves short that it's the merit, it's the achieving. You mentioned being high achieving, and I think a lot of us were taught to be high achieving. I think especially BIPOC folks who often feel like there's an immense pressure, responsibility, right? Need. And so, yeah, it's a good point.
I wanted to go back to another thing that you said. I want to talk a little bit about plant medicine. It's something that I've always been a little apprehensive to get into, maybe because I just don't have enough education and knowledge behind it. For people who, like me, might be a little bit nervous or skeptical of it, what's a way to kind of start small and integrate it? And are there certain medicines that are great for beginners at first? And I know that there's a lot of different ones that can be at different levels of intensity. Can you talk a little more about that?
Yeah. So I think I started to integrate with plant medicine in my 20s and then had that big journey in Peru with a shaman when I turned 30. And it was pretty life-changing. And these integrations can be. Gosh, I have a lot of thoughts about it. It's becoming more mainstream, which I'm really excited to see and also a little trepidatious about. I worry about it not being used with the reverence and respect that it deserves. I think that this is a part of decolonizing health and especially mental health. And if we really go back to decolonizing mental health and really look at our ancestors, this is the stuff they used, right?
Yeah.
So they used community and plática, talking, right? And a lot of people we had different people for different things that we would go to. And let's say someone that we went to go speak with, right? An elder for wisdom, and maybe an herbalist, right? And then maybe a doula, and all these things that we have transformed into more Western things. So, just like I am an advocate of if you need to take medication for your mental illness, we use what the resources are. So it could go anywhere from pharmaceuticals, of course, to plant medicine. And when we look at plant medicine, we're looking at a more holistic approach, right? And so we're looking at what's natural, what has the earth given us that we can use in its pure form in order to really access whatever it's supposed to mean to access. So we can access certain things as anti-inflammatories or painkillers, right? All of these things come from the jungle, they come from nature. And so now what we're seeing is, okay, well, we know some of the health benefits. We haven't explored the mental health benefits. Why? I don't know. That's crazy, but we're barely getting there, but I'm loving it. Okay. So there's a lot of research going to really big organizations and universities to start to say, okay, what's going on? How can we help with mental health? So we're seeing the impact that it can have on things like depression, anxiety, addiction, trauma, and PTSD. So these are big things that are now being invested in and we are hearing about. But a lot of people are going into retreats or going into using it maybe in as a way of medicine. So I know when I spoke to the shaman in Peru when I was 30, so I'm about to turn 40, so almost 10 years ago, he really said, this is not drugs. We don't consider this drugs. And when it's labeled as such, it's almost kind of like insulting to us. This is medicine. And this is what our ancestors used as medicine. So I think it's the perspective and the honoring, right? And really understanding that, because then I think our intention behind it is different. And then what we get out of it is different. And so you guys have talked a little bit about this on your podcast, it seems, but just kind of talking more about the idea of spirit, right? So that we're humans living this human experience, but we've got a spirit somehow, right, inside. And that is something that if we, depending on our faith, depending on our spirituality, connects us to the universe or a higher power or whatever it may be. And I think plant medicine does a good job at allowing us to take a step back from our human selves, which is like that day to day, who am I? What role do I play? What does society expect from me? Our egos, all these things. And being able to really step out of that and step into our spirit and maybe connect to a higher power, source, universe, whatever you call it. And so I think that it really allows for a shift in perspective that does such a number on our mental health, because I think it shows us that our mental health are symptoms that we're experiencing, a human experience we're having, but it doesn't fully encompass our whole self. And so it really allows for people to kind of detach in this really beautiful way that gives perspective and often can give a more objective look, which I think is what EMDR also kind of does.
Right.
And it allows us to kind of pull apart and be able to see, oh, I see that and I understand that so differently. And it is less personal, or I feel more empowered, or whatever it might be that we gain from it. So it can have so many benefits. And I think that it's just important to note that we really understand, if we can, the history behind it, the use, how you're supposed to use it, and hopefully being really intentional of what would you like to get from it and how would you like to connect to yourself and maybe source. And it can range, like you said, of potency. So it's
Yeah.
scary. So one thing, and with what I mentioned about the shaman, is we've been taught a narrative and an idea about drugs, right? So I'm going to use the word drugs because that's a Western idea versus
Right.
medicine. We've been taught that drugs are so bad, right? We've had the DARE campaign, all of that. I grew up with that, and the war on drugs. And so I think what we started to believe is everything got put under an umbrella, and there was no differentiation between weed, which is a plant, and something synthetic, right? Heroin, other things, right? That can be
Right.
really powerful. And so we've got to look at what's been man-made, what's been synthesized and used and manipulated. How can we extract the origin of that before we also put a framework on it of bad, good, right, or wrong? And what can we understand that could be just seen simplistically before we put all these stigmas on it? So there's a lot of stigma, which I think creates a lot of fear, understandably so, between what you've been told and taught. And that could be cultural, that could be religious. And then also between maybe never having had that experience. It's a fearful thing. And so that is understandable, but we need to know that there's, aside from the research we know now, they've been using this for eons, right? And it's
Yeah.
been a long time coming. And I think it's us going back and stripping ourselves from Western capitalistic society and really being in touch with our roots and knowing what feels right for us. So even things like tobacco could be used ceremonially. Cacao, right? Cacao can be used ceremonially. And then you've got other things. You've got, marijuana and hemp. How are those things used or not used? And there's a lot of history behind it, which is really fascinating. I geek out on this stuff because I love the history on how it got used or not used, because they also didn't want certain resources for us. They took certain resources from us. And so I would say, to start, has someone ever done marijuana before and seen how being altered, just simply being altered, how does that feel for you? How safe do you feel? Does that arise anxiety? Does that elicit fear, paranoia? And then there's stronger alterations, right? Like psilocybin mushrooms. Now they're starting to use ketamine, which was often really used in the veterinary arena for animals. We're starting to see, okay, how does ketamine assist people? And that's really being used a lot for trauma and PTSD and anxiety right now. And then we've got heavy hitters and more kind of natural things that are, I think, used ancestrally, definitely in my country, of ayahuasca, San Pedro, and that's one I've tried, which is a derivative, kind of like a cactus derivative. It's kind of like a
Okay.
cousin to ayahuasca. So they all will have different components which elicit different effects. And so to be really aware of that and know what you're getting into and how you might feel, so you can kind of prepare. But then that's the human thing for us to want to prepare, to want to know, right? And
Yeah.
then there's also the part of surrender, of you're going to just trust the medicine and trust that the ancestral lineage and the power of that is going to come through and it'll take care of you. But it's hard. I get that. We're humans. We want to know. So we can get really informed and get educated. And then also there's a part where it's trusting something totally different and new. So understandable that it's very scary. I hear you
Right.
on that.
Yeah, I think what to your point, like being open about it, and we talk a lot on this podcast about access and how you're saying the capitalization and westernization of a lot of these resources and these medicines. I think that when I think of plant medicine, my mind immediately jumps to ayahuasca and people going on these trips where they're paying thousands of dollars to go on this retreat that's luxury, and they all have ayahuasca trips and they're, meeting their higher self or they're dying. And people that I know who have done ayahuasca have not had the best experiences. So I think that it is really reflective on, like you said, doing your research, really knowing where this comes from, honoring the culture that it comes from, knowing why you're doing it, and being open to the experience that you're supposed to have with it. And I think that that can be empowering and will remove a little bit of the fear and the stigma behind some of these medicines.
Yeah, you're right. And you know how we were talking earlier about just preparation work, even for doing EMDR, and feeling like you've done enough foundational work to take yourself to a really deep place? It's the same thing. So some folks are like, you know what, this sounds great. I'm going to go do this. And they've maybe not even done any therapy or have no self-awareness. And then it's like, boom, you're being stripped wide open. And that's why people have really terrible trips. And sometimes really it can be traumatizing or, difficult. And it's all about preparation work. And I think it's also about how it's facilitated. You're right that it is becoming this really, let me go do this luxurious retreat and let me go have some fun, versus we're really being guided by people who know and work with the medicine. You've got to be careful on what practitioners and people you're accessing and all these things and where you're going and ending up. And I say, especially for the more indigenous stuff, the less synthetic things, you've got to go back to the people and you've got to honor that and respect the process because they know what to do and how to do it. And it's scary. I do see a lot kind of being put out there, and I don't know how good some of these people are running these retreats.
Especially if it looks more to be like a social media experience or experiment where you go and you just document absolutely everything, then you should be, slightly wary of some of the intentions behind either the facility or, who's inviting you to come out. I think that it's a very personal choice to do that. So I would hate to see it become another influencer kind of like moment in time where it gets kind of watered down, or it breeds more fear because all these influencers will go, or people who have a big social media presence, they'll have a poor experience and then they'll share that experience to their tens of thousands, if not millions of followers. And that deters people from doing their own research because these are, trusted, air quotes here, influencers who are sharing their opinion, which is a lot of the time taken as fact. So I think just always having an open mind about what it is that we're consuming online and making sure, like what you said, that ancestrally it's very important to tap into that community and really figure out who is there for the right reasons and who has the knowledge and the history of what it is that they're facilitating.
Amen to that. I mean, I've got my concerns with the online stuff, and especially a lot of the folks who are going into wellness for the wrong reasons and really maybe being exploitive of wellness and mental health needs, especially sometimes a lot of people who are coaching but don't have any background in mental health and any
Right.
training. That terrifies me. And so I think that we've got to really use our discernment more than ever. We talked about that even with therapy, with choosing to do EMDR, especially with plant medicine and exposing ourselves to things that could be really harmful if not used appropriately. So, yeah, I think discernment big time because there's so much out there on social media and so many influencers and people being influenced by people who may just totally not be who they think they are.
Kind of leads us to our next topic, talking about listening, like being discerning and listening to your intuition. How important is your intuition on your own mental health journey? And how can we learn from our ancestors about what they chose to do to stay grounded in life?
It's so big,
I know.
but so important. I could go many ways with this, but what it really makes me think is in me going kind of against the Western therapeutic way of viewing things. I want to be less of the knower and more of I'm walking with you, but you know and you truly understand yourself more than anyone could. So getting away from that like expert role. I know mental health quite well in and out, I mean clinically and personally, but I don't know everyone and everyone knows only themselves the most. And so I want it to be more empowering. And I want to step away from, we've got these diagnoses, and if we do this and we do that, then we can fix you. I think that everyone is just has their own medicine. I think everyone is so powerful and innately has their own kind of way about them, and be that their spirit, but also very much their intuition. I think that it's something that comes innately for a lot of people, and I would say definitely women very much so. I think just because the way our brains tend to operate more process oriented, not to minimize, men also have very strong intuitions. We're just talking about how we are socialized. Okay,
Right.
so because of socialization. And I think that there could be ways in which we get our power back and become more aligned, and become more aware and conscious of ourselves. That could be really powerful to help with our own healing and our own discernment again, to know what works for us and what doesn't, because what might work for me might not work for you, and might not feel right for you, right? Vice versa. It's so subjective. There is no one way. There are many roads to Mecca. And I think that everyone has their own beautiful little internal compass that connects them. And why not use that? That tool is so pivotal. And we understand that, and especially in research being done with folks who have gone through trauma, especially childhood adversity and trauma, brains already start to get wired in that way of using senses, using intuition, using things that might become more enhanced. So I'll give you an example. Let's say if I grew up in a household where there was someone with extreme rage and anger issues, or maybe even domestic violence, I could already probably sense the way someone is going to be presenting by the way I hear them open and walk in the door in the house. I'm listening to sounds, I'm picking up on energy, I'm picking up on all these things that often are not the concrete, what we're told, what to look for in social cues.
Mm-hmm.
And they've done brain scans, and they can see that someone's brain who's been through trauma lights up and activates all these different regions compared to someone who has not had to go through that, because they didn't have to develop those tools out of self-protection. And
Right.
so I think often too, people who have been through trauma really have pretty amazing intuitions and pretty good resources of sensing and extrasensory perception that we often don't talk about as much in Western psychology. I could go on for days, but yes, intuition is mighty important. And I think everyone has really powerful things that they work with internally. And if we could figure that out and enhance that a little bit more, I think it's really empowering people to go back to their own source, and stripping away from who I should and how I should, and what I'm told to be. And I think that that's really pivotal for someone's healing and growth.
Yeah, especially culturally. I think that we experience that. I mean, we're both oldest daughters, so the expectation in that way and what that means for our prospective cultures. But I agree. I think it's great to strip back those expectations and like how you perceive others thinking you should act, behave, speak, how you should live your life. Going off of intuition, we wanted to talk about nature and reconnecting to nature as a form of therapy. Can you speak to some of the benefits of getting to recharge outdoors?
Yeah, there are so many. So again, something ancestral that our people used, living and coexisting with nature, that we were stripped from, and now I think are trying to reclaim a little bit more.
Right,
And so there's many benefits. Okay, so we've
right.
been careful of the sun and stay away from the sun, and told a lot to be careful of the sun. And so the sun touching surface, right? So we're hearing a lot about grounding nowadays. I'm seeing that a lot online, where everyone's saying go outside, walk, and connect with the grass and the floor. You can also do it by touching a rock or a tree and all these things. And so what we're seeing, and they're doing all these beautiful scans, is that we are loaded with certain electrons and ions, and what we get to do is do an exchange. And so that really brings things down. They're seeing improvement, water, breeze, all of these things. And so improvements with lowering blood pressure, lowering cortisol, which is a stress hormone. And a lot of us, especially the anxious folks and stressed out folks, we have a lot of cortisol in our body, anti-inflammatory properties, you name it. So there's a lot of scientific stuff about this. I think this also goes to reclaiming and decolonizing our bodies and ourselves. We've been put in buildings where we're working 8, sometimes 10 hours plus, and we are not outside. I have to literally get up and go sit outside, or take a walk, or go
Yeah.
get some fresh air. because our society and capitalism is not conducive to that. We went into factories, we went into buildings, we disconnected from the land. And that all goes with everything we were talking about, even about plant medicine, all these things. We just kind of have disconnected from the land, which is such a resource, a natural built in resource and a protector. And so, yeah, it's extremely beneficial for our health and our mental health. And so I'm really a big advocate about using that as a proper tool, like a proper coping mechanism for us, and really being empowered by that knowledge.
Yeah, for sure.
Right.
When I do not go outside, when I'm stuck inside working on things, I can tell when I haven't had time to just really recharge, go on a walk. If I could have my perfect living situation is one of those indoor outdoor house situations where it's enclosed by walls and there's electricity, but there's no ceiling maybe, or one of the walls is open to the outside. I would absolutely love that because I just feel like I agree. I've seen how it's changed my mental health and even my physical health just by getting more sun, touching the ground, going on a walk, breathing in fresh air. The things that we take for
Absolutely.
granted.
Yeah, I think we made a very simple choice.
Yeah.
Even just yesterday, we were trying to figure out a place to sit. The restaurant was open seating. So we had decided on outside, but then we had gone upstairs and it was like uncomfortable, more like bar seating. But it was an intentional choice to sit outside, and we ended up finding like a front patio space. So I think there was, I don't know, probably over 25 tables available indoors, but we still chose outside because it was a beautiful afternoon into the evening, and we had just really enjoyed our day and ended up having a beautiful sunset last night as well. So I think just small choices that sometimes we're not even really aware of that can really help us with that. I spent
Yep.
so much time this summer in my room, unfortunately, studying because I had two accelerated courses. And by the end of it, I was just like, my body was yelling at me to just be outside. So the first opportunity I got, I went swimming with my daughter. And speaking of her, actually, she does nature play school, which allows her to be outside,
man.
which she always is anyway. But specifically
Beautiful.
a school designed for her to explore nature. And they do different locations every single week. And she's always picking up rocks. And a lot of the time, it's my mom who takes her. So that's their little moment, which I think is the cutest. And her teacher, her nature play teacher, talked about how kids are so innately gravitated toward being outside, picking up things off the ground, a leaf, a pine cone, a rock, because they can feel the energy, like it's just drawn, right? They can just kind of go right to it like a magnet. And so observing it, I guess, through that lens can kind of get us back to that place as adults who have been so far removed from it, I suppose.
Absolutely. Yeah, I can go on about children and animal energy and how pristine that stuff is, what teachers they can be to us to go back to the basics. And I'm so glad that your daughter has that. That sounds amazing.
She loves it.
That's so
There's a
cool. I wish we had
whole
more of that.
Yeah, there's a whole organization. I think they're called Wonder School, and they will certify you and teach you how to be a nature play, like certified, learn the benefits of outdoor play and exploration. So her teacher's incredible, and so it's just been really amazing to see her growth in it as well socially, because she gets to talk with other kids of different ages, and in a way, it's kind of like her little preschool but outside.
Yeah.
So I suppose
Yeah.
that
How
leads us
beautiful.
to a little bit about what we discussed earlier, and also an episode that we had on a few weeks ago about ego and ego death. We had so many questions, I think, that got left unanswered, or that we wanted to leave to more of an expert opinion about whether or not it's realistic to experience ego death. And is it necessary for us to hold on to some part of our ego for protection?
Yeah, this is an interesting one because I feel like it's been coming up a lot online, huh, on social media.
Yeah.
And I think everyone's really encouraging everyone to have all these really brutal ego deaths. And I can see why, but I can also worry about exactly what we've been talking about of, is someone really ready for that? Are they prepared? Because that's a big stripping. So the ego, it's like, for me, it gets a little spiritual of, okay, well, what are we here to do? And are we a spirit from ether that has just come into this human vehicle, right? And with the human vehicle and the human dimension that we're in, we have been granted a bunch of things to help us survive. So fight or flight, right? And innate things that we have, genetic things that we may have, biological things, but it also includes these kind of interesting psychological things. And so ego is one of them. And ego is one that is a bit of a gremlin. It's a difficult one, right? And so I think we have to be very aware and hopefully be really interested in it and be curious to being open. Because I think when ego is in its full grasp of us as a human, we become really narrow minded and very closed off. Like, I know it all, or this is the right way, or black and white, good, bad, right, or wrong.
Yeah.
Rigidity, right? Arrogance, all these things that can happen, or blocking ourselves off because we are in this protective space, and we could be in a really arrogant, high ego place, or it can also show in so many other ways with insecurity, self-doubt, right? Losing our power. It is a false sense of power. And so I think people use it as such, but it gets all jumbled up. It's a really interesting one. So it can be helpful for us, I think, when we are trying to protect ourselves, if people have gone through a lot of adversity, if they have gone through trauma, right? We can try to really understand with a compassionate and empathic lens. When it is hurtful towards others, I think is when we kind of get a little more, that's not the best, right? We're hearing a lot about narcissists online. We're hearing a lot about abusive relationships, right? It ranges in the way that it shows itself and how everyone accesses their own ego. My belief is that hopefully, as humans, what we're here to do, I think we are spirits having a human experience. And I think what we're here to do is step away from the human stuff as much as we can and try to be as connected to spirit as we can to survive the difficulty and density of this human experience. And if we can learn to step away from that, and hopefully, and I understand that this comes with privilege where we have safety, right? I understand that people, not everyone, especially let's say people in Palestine, they do not have safety. I wouldn't expect anyone to be doing ego work, right? And so we do ego work, we do therapy, we do self-help out of privilege. And even how we talked about like generations before us and our culture and all of that. My mom did not have the privilege. She had to work. She had to get by. She couldn't sit and contemplate these things. I get the privilege to do that, and I take that with a lot of honor. And I think that we've got to start to try to be conscious. We've got to try to really be aware of ourselves and take ownership of ourselves in the best way possible. And that includes looking at ourselves and the not so great parts, the defensive parts, the protective measures, the ego, right? The way that we can either push people out or isolate ourselves. And all these things that are protective measures started out for a good reason, but ultimately, if we're not in that space and we are in a safer place, we can let that go, right? I don't need to be in fight or flight. I'm not in the middle of, fighting an animal for my life. I'm sitting in my office, right? Here safely in my home. And so I can undo some of those things that were innately there to protect us and really try to step away and be in a more grounded place. But it takes time and it takes work and it takes a lot of awareness and wanting to be open. Some are there, some are not. We're all in different places on that journey, but yeah, ego is it's an interesting one.
I guess my question is, should the goal be to completely strip your ego, or do we need part of that?
Yeah, I think it's hard because it's really subjective on how that manifests for people.
Right.
If it's getting in the way, right, and it's really impairing you or your relationships, I think you need to be careful of really how does this impact me and how does this hurt me and hurt my growth or hurt my happiness or my connectivity and love with other people. And that could vary. So it depends, and I think it's good. I think being able to strip our ego and coming to places of humility and understanding and awareness are beautiful. Those have been the biggest moments in my life where I've changed for the better. But I think that there could be many. There could be many ego deaths. There could be many evolutions of that because I'm not always going to be in this really righteous, self-actualized place. And so knowing that I might carry a little bit of that ego with me all the time, little bits, it might pop out. And I just need to also not shame myself for that. I'm a human. We are mere mortals. We're not angels walking on earth. And so I think it's finding a balance with who you want to be and what feels like, what does your integrity tell you, right?
Yeah.
Are you living a life that feels it's with integrity? Yeah.
I think where I've arrived on it after we had our little deep dive episode and everything that I've been reading and researching is I think that it can be a teacher. And so, like you said, we're going to be at different stages of our lives throughout. And if I use my ego as a teacher, if I'm showing up in a way where I'm like, ooh, I'm not proud of that, or if it's a detriment to myself, or like you said, to others, where I'm operating in my ego all of the time and I'm not able to be self-aware or really be compassionate and sensitive to how I'm treating others around me, I think that's definitely detrimental. But I think that you can kind of use it as a teacher. And my personal opinion is I think that there are ego deaths, but I don't know if it's necessarily realistic or necessary to completely rid yourself of ego, at least not all of the time, like you were saying.
Right.
Yeah.
It sounds like it's an attempt to attain perfection, because ultimately what we've discussed is it's a very personalized experience.
Yeah.
So again, personal check-ins, like just checking in with yourself, always being honest with yourself. But it's like, if we can't start there, then maybe there's a little bit of a problem.
Right. We can't all be like Gandhi and Buddha. And
Yeah.
that shouldn't be the thing that we're striving for.
Exactly. I don't know that we really reach self-actualization. I think that's quite difficult to do. And I believe maybe some folks have attained that, really spiritual, dedicated people in our lifetime. But are we all Gandhi? Are we all Mother Teresa? No, we're just here doing our thing. And so we want to strive towards less ego. We want to strive towards more integrity and alignment, but we don't have to beat ourselves up either. I think that there's this big notion of you have to be really self-actualized and attain this higher level of consciousness and be above it all. And I think to be human is to connect both to the divine and also to the humanity and the density here. That's why we're here. And so, yeah, that's never a bad thing, I think.
That episode was tough for us to really narrow down what it is that we wanted to fully discuss. And it was just sparked out of a conversation because Cristina had posted something on Reddit and it got like an insane amount of comments and a lot of back and forth and discourse. And so really it ended up being more so who struggles with it more, because we were talking about it in the realm of dating, and ego has a lot to do with pride, of course. And because it was a dating question, a lot of it was like, we're not approaching people because we're fearful of that rejection. So a lot of that back and forth is like, who deals with rejection and how do we deal with it? Is there a huge difference between men and women and how that happens? Where is the disconnect happening? So
Yeah.
lots of conversations to still be had on it. But I appreciate that perspective because it doesn't feel so big and scary.
And I think, like you
Yeah,
had said earlier, that men are just conditioned differently, socialized differently. So I think that they experience ego differently. Whereas I think women, like one of the things that I had said in the Reddit thread is that like, I've gotten rejected before. And did it sting in the moment? Yeah, but I was like, okay, well, he's obviously not my person, so I'm just going to keep moving on. But it seems like men somehow just can't do that. It hurts them a little bit deeper.
Yeah,
Not all men. I
and
shouldn't say all men.
I thought it was interesting that you guys brought that up, and I agree. I think that socialization aspect is huge, that we really need to be honest with ourselves about. It is not an equal playing field in a lot of ways, as much as we would like it to be. And so I think we have to understand not only ourselves as women, you seeking partnership and putting yourself out there, you're also thinking, whoa, these responses, that's interesting. Let me break that down. And how does that feel for me receiving that, who operates differently? And yeah, that's why humans are fascinated. A big reason why I did end up doing therapy is I think this is all really interesting and very nuanced. But yeah, I think we need to overall really look at how, as a society, I think there's a lot of judgment. I think that there's a lot of need for perfectionism, or to receive people in the way that we want to receive them versus the way that they are. And you guys alluded to that. If I respond a certain way, right? That's because how I feel and how I'm responding to what you're saying and how you're coming off, and that can be okay. I don't have to give you what you want. I don't have to please you and make you happy, make you comfortable. And so, yeah, that's an interesting topic in and of itself. And I think perfectionism and the standards and everything, especially with social media and dating and oh, you name it, there's so much there.
Right. I know we could go on and on. We do really want to be respectful of your time and everything. So I just wanted to thank you so much for coming on. And I think that we had an incredibly deep conversation. I'm really excited for our listeners to hear it. So can you let our listeners know where they can find you? I know you practice in California and Nevada, which is exciting. It has a little bit more access.
Yeah, luckily I got duly licensed when I moved to Nevada. But yes, you can find me on social media. I'm on Instagram. And so I am cultivate_calm. I have a website, which is cultivatecalmtherapy.com. And you can find me there. I have links to everything on my Instagram as well, like a link tree and all that. And you can see my post and connect with me there.
Wow. Well, thank you so much, Cristina, again for coming on our podcast. That was a really grounding episode. I feel very calm.
Yeah.
So her practice name is fitting because I do feel like we cultivated some calm in that conversation.
Just realized that right now.
Yeah. Very grateful
yes.
for her time and for just all of her knowledge. I could have sat there for so much longer and gone way deeper on some of the topics, but I know that she has clients today and everything, and so we just want to be respectful of our guest time. But I'm so excited for you guys to hear it, and I want to hear your thoughts.
Please. We're trying to have conversations. I think that for me, I really appreciate when someone can speak so eloquently about their field of expertise. I probably had my active listening face on, which I think I'm going to rebrand resting bitch face to active listening face, because when I'm editing and I'm looking at myself, I'm like, girl, are you okay? Because sometimes I look like I'm not okay and I'm really just listening hard. And so I think that mostly what we talked about is understanding and getting to know if and when you're ready for certain things. We have already had 3 therapists on, so clearly we, you know.
Oh yeah, we have.
Yeah, so
all
we
very
have
different perspectives and energies.
Yes. And so while I can appreciate all their different perspectives and where they come from, they're still women of color and they still understand the community in different ways. And so I think most of all with the conversation that we just had with Cristina is really taking a step back and figuring out what it is that you're ready for, what it is that you're not ready for, whether it be plant medicine to EMDR, Western, Eastern, ancestral, honoring whatever the choice is and knowing when you're ready to go that deep. Like I said, I'm not. So, and we talked about this too with you because you're a little bit farther along in your therapy journey. You've done several more years of talk therapy and now you're in the ERP, which is exposure therapy is pretty much like next level. I don't think you can do exposure therapy without having done talk therapy before. So it's understanding yourself
and it's
knowing
something
yourself.
that they screen you for, or they really have to prepare you for it, kind of like Cristina was talking about in the beginning, to get you there.
Right.
Yeah.
It's not like, oh, I'm going to sign up for this. It's not a dance class. You know what I mean?
No. We're not going to a sound bath, besties. Yeah, but I know. I feel like I'm letting everything marinate. I also love that we kind of got some of our questions answered about ego. And I love where we landed. I think
it felt kind of scary for me. And when I was editing the ego episode, sometimes it felt like, which is just my I'm going to use a Cristina word, a hypercriticalism of myself, because I was like, oh, I just feel this is like disjointed and we kind of lost our way a couple of times. But I don't really think so. I think sometimes talking about something that feels so big and like we learned today is very personal and very subjective.
Yeah.
Just figuring out what your ego is doing or not doing for you, I think is the biggest takeaway. And it's not some big scary thing like this, Cristina. We had name twins today. Yes. Empaths, Cristina said that it could be your teacher. And I like that it could be that, but it could also be a gremlin.
I mean, sometimes like the ugliest parts of ourselves are our biggest teachers.
For sure. Yeah. And ultimately from the movie, the gremlins do end up being kind of cute.
Right?
Yeah. They just don't like water.
What does your ego not like? Being exposed?
Probably. Talk to them.
Anyway, be sure to follow us on Apple and Spotify, wherever you listen, even iHeartRadio. You can listen on Alexa. You can listen on Amazon Prime. So be sure to follow us. Also, please leave us a 5-star rating and a review would be so helpful. It's how we get discovered in the algorithm, you guys. So even if it's just you rock.
5 stars, you rock. Don't ever change. Hags.
Literally. But that would be really helpful. It also lets us know what you guys like, where we want to keep evolving this to. You can also converse with us on Spotify comments and on our YouTube, where we also want you to follow, subscribe, and give us a thumbs up.
And if you want to know when the videos are uploaded, click the little bell thingy.
Click the little bell.
And it'll be like, hey, Empaths Anonymous podcast just uploaded a new video.
Thank you so much for listening. And if you made it to the end of the episode on YouTube, comment with the leaves in the wind emoji for spirit.
For spirit. For nature. For plant medicine.
Yes.
It's all encompassing.
Yes.
The flying leaf. Thanks, guys. Love you guys.
Bye.